BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. BlackBoxNed88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. So big thank you to everybody who checked out our upload yesterday on the Zodiac Killer suspect, Qvale, and that is going to be done in at least two parts. We're going to make it a multi-part segment. So the next one on Zodiac Killer suspect Qvale will be coming out tomorrow to anybody who's listening to these things live as they come out. And if you're listening to this in the future, we have many things on the Zodiac Killer available here on Black Box Online Radio. As always, you can like and subscribe if you want to follow along. And it is now October, and here in West Virginia, the winds are starting to howl, and we took a major cold spell. But what I can say is that we're going to be delving into the paranormal a little bit and looking at some cases that are dealing with ghosts, hauntings, poltergeists even, as well as just some legends and looking at what people have to say, getting in the mood for Halloween. And not only what people have to say, but also how are these stories affecting people, and just asking and answering the question, what are these experiences all about? What are people actually experiencing? And today we're going to be talking about a location in Birmingham, Alabama, known as Sloss Furnace. I learned about this one when I was either a kid or a teenager, and I saw a special on one of those paranormal shows. It was so long ago, I couldn't even tell you which one it was. And as I was reading up on Sloss Furnace, I found that one had been aired in the year 2000. Maybe that was the one that I saw as a kid. But the name always stood out to me, especially because I thought that it was a rather different type of ghost hunting and paranormal expedition, exploring this in a furnace. And what did they mean by that? And it definitely caught my attention as a kid. But what really is Sloss Furnace all about? First, I would like to give a big shout out to the website Fright Furnace, which deals with many things involving ghost tours of Sloss, but I think that they also do many other events that we can talk about as the recording goes on. But let's jump over to their article, The Urban Legend of Sloss Furnace in the Beginning. Once again, this is on frightfurnace.com. From 1882 to 1971, Birmingham's Sloss Furnaces transformed coal and ore from surrounding acres into the hard steel that would pave the way for the Industrial Revolution. From skyscrapers in New York's glittering skyline to automobiles being built in Detroit, America came to rely on Birmingham and Sloss Furnaces for providing materials needed to produce thousands of products. Birmingham grew to a metropolis almost overnight, earning the nickname the Magic City. But as with all progress, a price was paid in the currency of blood. And there's even a line in the song The Spring Hill Mining Disaster that says, "Bone and blood is the price of coal." So definitely we're going to be, once again, looking at how these stories have affected people. That'll be something else in this particular paranormal journey. The rise of Slag. In the early 1900s, there was an individual named James Slag Wormwood. And when you hear that name, James Slag Wormwood, he sounds like he's right out of a Dickens novel or something like that. And he was the foreman of the graveyard shift, the period between sunset and sunrise where a skeleton crew of nearly 150 workers kept the furnace fed. During the stifling summer months, temperatures throughout the plant would reach more than 120 degrees. And what they also have said in almost everything that you'll hear about Sloss Furnace about this is that the people who would work this graveyard shift were either just brand new to the area, trying to earn somewhat of a living, or they were just very poor, and this was the only other job they could find. So they would take this job, working the graveyard shift, and dealing with 120 degree temperatures in the summertime, as well as with no breaks of anything like this. Like 1888, we haven't really dealt with labor in that particular way. But going back to James Slag Wormwood, let's go back to their article here. To impress his supervisors, Wormwood would make his workers take dangerous risks and forcing them to speed up production. During his reign, 47 workers lost their lives, 10 times more than any shift in the history of Sloss Furnace. And with this one, you can see that when they say shift, they mean graveyard shift versus the day shift and the evening shift. But this is one of the things that people begin to think, that the people who passed away, these 47 individuals, have become the souls or the spirits or the paranormal entities that are haunting Sloss Furnace. And I was going through some of the videos on YouTube looking at what some ghost hunters would had to say, and there's several different channels about this. Giving a shout out to Alabama's Most Haunted. That was one that I watched, and they put forward several different claims of the paranormal experiences that they encountered at Sloss Furnace while they were investigating. And one of the things they had reported was that a chair had mysteriously vanished on camera. Like in one frame, there are two steel chairs, like steel folding chairs, and then just like instantly one of them is gone and just disappeared from sight. They also had something else that I found much less there's much less substance material to talk about, just looking at a little bit of a shadow in the corner and just thinking that that is a type of paranormal entity. Since we've been having a few ghost discussions prior to Halloween this year, I mentioned a story that I had told once about being at summer camp as a teenager, and there was this guy named Doug who said that these ghosts had put a broom in the corner of this little cabin. That broom wasn't there before. This is the exact opposite. Hey, there were two steel chairs here. Now there is one. I mean, can you think of any explanations that would be able to provide that? Or just, I mean, that is a very bizarre claim to make when you're looking at ghost hunting and how this would play out, like that a ghost is making a steel chair vanish, or even back to that other one, that a ghost is making a broom appear. Objects are coming out of thin air, or not objects are vanishing. But as we've said in these ghost discussions, this really does cross into a different line of territory where you would have a ghost that is not only present, and you're not just looking at some shadowy image. This ghost can manipulate the surroundings around you. And as we said, the people who are investigating this are perhaps trying to get in touch with the 47 individuals who passed away while working at Sloss Furnace. But we have even more material to go through here, because we're going to see that James Slag Wormwood is going to be someone who is caught up in this as well. And let's go back to the article from Frightful Furnace, frightfurnace.com. In October of 1906, James Slag Wormwood lost his footing at the top of the highest blast furnace, known as Big Alice, and he plummeted into a pool of melted iron ore. His body melted instantly. It was reported that Slag must have become dizzy from the methane gas created by the furnace and lost his balance. But Slag had never set foot on the top of the furnace during his years of employment. Many thought that the workers had finally had enough of Wormwood's slave driving and fed him into the furnace. But no workers were ever brought to trial. Sloss Industries soon discontinued the graveyard shift, citing numerous accidents and reports of strange incidents that decreased the steel production. So as we see, one of the possible hauntings that could be taking place here at Sloss Furnace could be the spirit or soul of James Slag Wormwood, who may have been murdered there on site. And I really do have to give credit to this presentation here, because when we were talking about the ghosts of Waverly Hills Sanatorium, they spell it with an O, sanatorium. When we were talking about Waverly Hills Sanatorium, there was the case of a potential suicide that took place of a nurse who either got pregnant and then got tuberculosis, or perhaps she just got tuberculosis. The story varies in a few different ways. And they were saying that she committed suicide on the grounds of Waverly Hills Sanitarium. Once again, the stories vary, maybe by hanging herself or maybe by jumping out of a window, but they would not reveal her real name to the public because they said they wanted to protect the identities of her family members that lived in the local area. But that really just, there's something that just distances you so far from investigating or trying to learn more about the subject, or to even begin to comprehend the human element when you're just saying that, oh, yeah, there was a nurse here, and, well, maybe she committed suicide this way, and maybe it was because of this reason, and just that's the end of it. I mean, that really doesn't allow you to even begin to comprehend what really could have taken place. And with this here, I think that this is a rather different type of ghost story, because once again, we've mentioned how a lot of ghost stories really just focus in on, they're often seeing a woman. They're often seeing there are also a lot that deal with soldiers, but there are many that see a woman with long flowing hair wearing a light colored nightgown. And we really should say that a lot of the things that we have talked about as well deal with ghosts of Civil War veterans, ghosts of soldiers, period. You can find countless things on YouTube about many people that are connected to wars of various kinds. So that is something else that we perhaps could do an entire episode on, just like ghosts of fallen military heroes and such. And it could be something about how the human brain is just trying to normalize the darkness, or something that people have a very strong connection to. You could say the woman or a soldier, something that people believe maybe is meant to keep them safe in some way. So once again, they're trying to normalize the darkness, and the brain is just doing this to try and make everything feel more comfortable. But, Fright Furnace does not end here, and let's keep going. A night watchman in 1926 sustained injuries after being pushed from behind and told angrily by a deep voice to get back to work. The man, upon searching his grounds, could find no sign of any other living person. Is that the ghost of James Slag Wormwood? In 1947, 3 supervisors turned up missing, found unconscious and locked in the small boiler room in the southeastern part of the plant. None of the 3 could explain exactly what happened to them. All agreed that they were approached by a man whose skin had been badly burned, who angrily shouted at them to push some steel. And many different people are experiencing the same thing. Do you think there's any connection there? Probably the most horrifying tale occurred in 1971, the night before the plant closed. Samuel Blumenthal, the Sloss night watchman, who was nostalgically taking a last look about, found himself face to face with the most frightening thing he had ever seen. He described it simply as evil, a half-man, half-demon who tried to push him up the stairs. When Blumenthal refused, the monster began to beat him with his fists. Upon examination by Dr. Jack Barlow, Blumenthal was found to have been covered with intense burns. He died before ever returning to Sloss. And I think the way that sentence is written, meaning that he didn't die from these injuries, it just means that he never went back, based on the way that is written. But we should say one concluding note on this article here, that there have been more than 100 reports of suspected paranormal activity at Sloss Furnaces recorded in the Birmingham police records, from minor incidents such as steam whistles apparently blowing by themselves to major sightings and the rare physical assault. The physical assaults are the biggest things. A steam whistle blowing by itself, well, maybe there's some built-up pressure in some ways. And also the thing we have to understand about technology is sometimes we aren't completely aware of how machines are functioning. There could be a little bit left here and a little bit left there. And I had this one pellet gun once, how some people have a BB gun or a pellet gun, and it was unloaded. Not only was it unloaded, it was broken, and there's no possible way you could have put any type of cartridge into it. But then I pulled the trigger once, and a pellet shot out of it because it must have been, lodged in the chamber and such. These types of things can happen with technology. Steam, okay, maybe there's some built-up pressure in the steam whistle from something or some sorts. But when you look at what people are saying when they're getting beaten up, this is the stuff that I like to investigate. If these stories are true, and I'm taking it off the table that these are just pure fabrications, because I would like to really look at the merit of the idea here. When someone is getting injured and just getting burns on a large portion of his body, like the way that this individual named Samuel Blumenthal did, what happened? Was he attacked by somebody in the dark who is trying to make him think that it was a demon? Was this something that was just like a complete psychotic break that happened? Or was this indeed a genuine case of paranormal activity? Because if somebody is experiencing, even just getting punched, as it says here, beaten with his fists over and over again, that person is experiencing something. And you must have met somebody at some point in your life who has experienced these types of paranormal events, which they claim that some type of paranormal entity interacted with them in a particular way. And it could be as we said, someone gets injured, the way that Samuel Blumenthal was here in this particular story. But I also told a story once back when we did the segment called Occult Mondays, of somebody I knew back in college who claimed that they had a jewelry box in the closet, and the jewelry box came out of the closet by itself, moved down the stairs, and then slammed itself into the front door of the house. Once again, no one's around, no person is present, no other conscious entity is present at all. And then her only explanation was that the ghost had moved the jewelry box to the front door of the house. Ghost, poltergeist territory, and things of that nature. I would also like to give a shout out to the YouTuber ABOM79, that's ABOM79, and he has a 44-minute video on Sloss Furnace, And you can see some great videography of this place on YouTube. It's really just something that I think is quite different about when we think of places that are haunted, we often look toward the haunted house, or perhaps a castle, or as we said, like with Waverly Hills Sanatorium, even a hospital, which that specific one was meant to treat tuberculosis patients. But when we look at Sloss Furnaces, I mean, there definitely is a creepy aura about the place, no matter what, whether you believe in ghosts or not. It definitely has a creepy feeling because it's a dilapidated, former, furnace where they would fire the coal for steel. So I can say that that is definitely one that stands out in terms of how, like it has its own sort of dark presence, and especially when people are going through all of these different passages and tunnels, and you can find out that there's actually a very intricate network of tunnels that are under Sloss Furnace, and also saying that if anybody would like to see more about this, there's an episode of Ghost Adventures on Sloss Furnace. Now, when I saw this special on the television when I was much younger, I remember they were saying that only one employee or former employee, or just somebody from the neighboring community, it had to have been somebody from the community because Sloss Furnaces would have been closed and not operational in the year 2000 or thereabouts. There was only one person who was willing to stay overnight there. And of course, they, did their whole ghost hunting setup, and they are trying to measure sounds and look at what they could possibly hear in the dark. But of course, they didn't provide any concrete proof to anyone's satisfaction that the place is actually haunted. But what I think is quite different with this particular event is that it really just shows that people lived in some horrible conditions. Working the graveyard shift in a steel plant, or the coal furnace, we should say, at 120-degree temperatures with no breaks, 8 hours sun up to sundown, thereabouts. The graveyard, this with the skeleton crew, that has its own creepy vibe to it. And even if you were just to think about, some people like James Slag Wormwood, if that is true how he died, that he fell off the big Alice Tower into a pot of molten iron, and then he was instantly killed. If that is true, then that is just absolutely horrifying in its own right. And it really just goes to show you that people do have horrendous experiences in the living world. I mean, once we add in the ghost stories, that there is a certain type of there's a certain additive to it, but I mean, real life can be also terrifying. And one more thing that I would like to say about Sloss Furnaces is that if you go through some of the videography that we have here on YouTube, and there's even one called Ghosts in the Tunnel at Sloss Furnace, also by Alabama's Most Haunted, and they with theirs, they really showed like what it's like going through some of the tunnels that are underneath this location. Like I said, it's a very intricate network. And I think that as a human being, we all have these moments of curiosity when we're like, okay, even if you don't believe in ghosts, what's at the end of that tunnel? And then it's like, even if you don't believe in ghosts, well, then what is in this dark room? And we just have this desire and passion to follow the unknown. And once you learn about a place like Sloss Furnace, and maybe you've even heard, as we've said the words, intricate network of tunnels, you're like, well, how many? Where do they lead? What's really going on? I think a lot of us really have that passion to know what is it that is hiding in the dark. And we can almost begin to leave it at there for now, because I would just really like to know your response to that particular challenge question. Do you believe the human brain tries to normalize situations by making everything feel just more comfortable, more familiar, more relative, and that's why people are seeing images of maybe a woman, a female ghost, or a soldier, or perhaps people are also encountering something like the foreman, as we said, like James Slag Wormwood. That is something else that people would be thinking about. Do you believe the human brain does that, or do you believe that all of these cases are genuine sightings in paranormal activity? Now, I would say though, if you do ever get a chance to go over to the website frightfurnace.com, which provided the article that we were going through here, they have all sorts of different things. They have not only the Furnace Tour, which you can do, but they have something called the Roadkill Cafe, the Marathon of Horror, and the Stages of Death. This is all available on their website, and I thought this one was rather, this is the one that caught my attention the most, and I will just read what they have written here. Stages of Death offers the most unique entertainment you won't find anywhere else. From fire eaters to freak shows, live bands to danger acts, you never know what you will find when you visit Sloss Furnace's Fright Furnace. The lineup for the Stages of Death is constantly changing, so you'll never know what you'll see until you get here, but one thing is certain, you won't be able to look away. And the Stages of Death is located in the Roadkill Cafe. So they really have a big thing that is set up here. However, this stuff is currently closed for the 2020 season. If anybody is listening to this in the far, far distant future, back in 2020 we had something called the global pandemic, and I don't need to provide any more explanation to people who are listening to this in October of 2020 as these things are coming out, but yes, it is that time. So I think that's where we're going to have to leave it at for now. I would love to hear anything that you guys have to say about the paranormal, and anything you have to say just about how the human brain functions, as well as just horrible experiences that people are dealing with. If you want to weigh in on some of like the labor conditions and such, I know that wasn't the most exciting introduction, but if these people like James Slag Wormwood existed in real life, I'm sure he would have been no peach. I didn't know the guy personally, just reading these descriptions here, if those things are true. Please share anything you would like in the comment section below. And as always, you can like and subscribe if you'd like to follow along with our series on the Zodiac Killer suspect, Kjell Qvale. The next segment will be coming out tomorrow. That's all for me now, and I will see you guys on Instagram for the bonus podcast. Until next time.